Let's have a look at an interesting CAM application. Today we'll be discussing direct inputs into EDGECAM cycle dialogs. Did you know that mathematical equations can be directly entered into EDGECAM cycle dialogs? There's no need to use a calculator and then enter those results into the cycle dialog. In fact, it is even possible to build relationships by leveraging existing values. These relationships can be a key factor in ability to quickly update CAM files at a later point and in capturing best practices for consistent results. In the dialog example shown here, notice the profile start extension field. The cyan colored box around this field signifies a formula. Now we don't know just by glancing exactly what that formula is, but we can click in the start extension field at any point, whether it's at 2 minutes or 2 months from now, and we can see what the formula is and alter it if needed. FYI, the help system is a very good technical reference on this capability. Simply open the user guide, go to the search tab, and type in the keyword formula. This brings us directly to the Formulas and Dialogs topic, which has great information detailing how this functionality works. Let's start our exploration by looking at a simple mathematical equation, 0.125 plus 0.05. Instead of using a calculator, when we enter this directly into the cycle dialog, we see that EDGECAM is good at math and has correctly determined the result. Let's consider a more complex formula where we'll use parentheses to force order of operations. When we put parentheses around the 0.25 divided by 2, we direct that to be solved first. Then 50 thousandths is added to the result. EDGECAM is good at this too and correctly solves this equation. If we change the order of parentheses, that equation is also solved correctly, as we see shown here. Parentheses can be nested, and it's also possible to use advanced mathematics. Details on these advanced mathematics are explained in the help system. Using this part as an example, I want to begin by focusing on the profiling cycle that machines this open pocket area. Now in this sort of a machining condition, we want the tool to start off the part and ideally end off the part. With zero extra extension, just from a toolpath 101 perspective, we know that the tool's full diameter would start right on the geometry, which in this case is the open pocket feature. So it's probably not very surprising to anyone that's gone through a foundational milling class that the start and end input fields have numeric values in them, and we see the effect of that. Now we know there's not a formula in here right now, and the way that we know that is that there's no cyan box around the value. In this case, we've used a 3/16 diameter tool. If I put in a quick formula like 3 divided by 16, notice that there's now a cyan box around there. When the cursor is not in that field, the cyan color simply shows there's a formula, but we see the results of that calculation. So when I go into that equation, I can now see the 3/16. Well, that's a full tool. What if I wanted half the tool? Well, I want to put in parentheses at the beginning and end of the 3/16 to now come out to exactly half the tool, but then probably, again, another pair of parentheses. Let's go add maybe 100 thousandths of an inch to that. This is an entire equation now that figures out half the tool size and then adds another 100 thousandths. And we see that the calculated number there is now this value. Well, that's great. Again, I can go back at any time into this area, into this field by clicking the cursor and adjust that equation as needed. I could take that equation and right-click and copy it and then put it down in here and to paste it. But what would happen if I changed the start? Well, I'd have to go change the end because there's no relationship that says end equals start, which is, again, a fairly common thing in an open type situation like we're doing here. So if I wanted to make the end match the start, I'm going to need to find out Well, what is the value of the start? So if I hold down the Shift key on the keyboard and then move the cursor over start, I can see its JavaScript reference is command.start. So now that I know that, I'm going to go into the end formula or the end input field and say command dot. Notice as I start to type, I see possibilities, and we'll select command.start. Now at a glance, I've built a relationship that the end matches the start. And this is going to help us quite a bit, because if I ever change this value down the road and maybe say, well, 1/8 of an inch would be a better adjustment, notice that my end immediately calculates to match whatever the start's going to be. And that's going to be a really significant advantage. Now there is one more further improvement we can make to this. Right now, I simply have the start value being just a hard-coded number. It's a number I came up with, but what if that tool size ever changes? Well, how do we figure out what the tool size is? Well, internally in the same dialog box, we reference other values in this dialog box using command dot and then the name of the input field. We discover the name of the input field by hovering over the cursor with the Shift key held down. But you can also look back to other things such as tool or job related stuff. And the help system in the topic on formulas on dialog boxes explains the technical references for those pieces of information. In this case here, watch what happens if I start with a tool dot. And notice I start to see quite a bit of information. And I know that what I'm looking for here is tool diameter. So I can take tool diameter, and so now that I know what that is, I'm going to actually take that and let's insert it into this formula. So instead of this whole 3/16, let's replace that with the tool diameter. So now my relationship is saying I want the start extension to be take the tool diameter, cut it in half, add 1/8 of an inch. I still get the same results, which is what I want. Let's press OK. Next, we'll go to the tool dialog, and what would happen if I changed to a different diameter tool? Rather than go out to Tool Store, I'll just mimic this test by quickly inserting a number into here. Let's make it 3/4 of an inch diameter now. Notice that before, the tool path only extended out to here, where now the tool path extends out much further. Well, why is that? Well, that's an automatic result of the relationship we just built. So I've made it more simple for me to make quick refinements to the tool path later, in this case choosing a different tool, but have my machining intent considered and have the tool path updated to reflect my machining intent. So rather than figuring out the numbers that make my machining intent work, what if I could just put in my machining intent via equations? And that's what I've done here. If we undo back to what we had before, let's look at one other common example where now we'll go down to one of the drill cuts, this drill cycle, and let's set an equation so that the cut increment is based on the tool. So again, I'll start with the tool dot diameter. EDGECAM automatically begins to automatically populate this, and I could make this 2.5 times the tool diameter. So just as a general rule of thumb, perhaps in my machine shop, we use 2.5 times the tool's diameter for our cut increment. A quick, simple relationship has now been created. This technology offers the possibility to build intelligent relationships. You've seen how we eliminated repetitive data entry by using existing values. Rather than typing the same values twice, we just built a relational link between the dialog inputs. It's always better to work smarter instead of working harder. The key to leveraging this ability is to find out what the JavaScript name of the field is that we want to reference. The trick to doing that is to hold down the Shift key on the keyboard and then move the cursor over the title of the input that you intend to reference somewhere else. So when we hold down the Shift key and then hover over the Start extension field of the profiling cycle, the JavaScript reference is revealed. Pay attention to capitalization because this is important. Now that you know the JavaScript reference to the Start extension input, we can go to any other input in the cycle dialog, Type command with a capital C, and this will immediately populate a list that shows available options. Continue typing until you've narrowed down the item that you want to select, and off you go. It's also possible to reference other values which are not in the dialog. We showed one example where the tool diameter is used. It's also possible to reference setup information, such as the stock. It's also possible to reference PCI variables. Remember to use the help system as your technical reference. Search for the keyword formula and you'll locate the Formulas and Dialogs topic. Formulas and Dialogs provide EDGECAM users with ability to directly input machining intent. Formulas and cycle dialogs are available across all license levels and to milling, turning, and wire EDM. HEXAGON technology and expertise is helping our customers improve manufacturing processes and improve product quality. We invite you to bring us your machining challenges.